Frames change choices before people notice a decision. Framing is the act of deciding what the situation means. Whoever names the meaning controls the direction. In practice, this means you do not argue the details first. You state what the moment represents in one clean line. If you call it a misunderstanding, the other person relaxes and explains. If you call it disrespect, they start defending their identity. This is done by choosing a label that triggers the drive you want, like status or loss. It shows up when someone ignores your point and corrects your framing instead. The moment they fight the label, you already set the battlefield. Framing works fastest through the first label that lands. The first description becomes the reference point the brain uses to judge everything after. In practice, this means you speak early, even if you say little. You name the interaction before the other person names it. If you delay, their frame becomes default and yours sounds reactive. This is done by opening with a single definition, like this is a boundary discussion, not a debate. Once the label is in place, every statement is filtered through it. It shows up when someone keeps repeating one phrase while you keep explaining details. They are not listening for facts. They are listening for a frame to win. Framing changes decisions by shifting what counts as a loss. People protect losses more aggressively than they pursue gains. In practice, this means you describe the cost of inaction, not the benefit of action. You make the default feel expensive. If you frame a change as losing control, the other person tightens and resists. If you frame the same change as avoiding future embarrassment, they move faster. This is done by naming what they risk losing: status, time, access, or credibility. It shows up when someone suddenly gets serious after hearing one consequence. They did not become logical. They became protective. Framing controls choices by choosing the comparison point. People do not judge options in isolation. They judge them against whatever baseline is placed in front of them. In practice, this means you introduce a reference that makes your preferred option feel normal. You do not need pressure if the baseline does the pressure for you. This is done by mentioning a higher cost, a worse outcome, or a harder path first. Then your offer feels reasonable even if nothing changed. It shows up when someone says that sounds fair compared to what you said earlier. They are not evaluating reality. They are evaluating contrast. Framing changes decisions by controlling what the person thinks you want. People resist when they feel targeted. They comply when they feel included. In practice, this means you frame your request as mutual benefit while keeping your advantage intact. You make your interest sound like shared interest. This is done by using language that implies alignment, like we both need this to work. The other person starts proving they are cooperative instead of checking your terms. It shows up when someone agrees and then later realizes they carried most of the cost. They did not miscalculate. They accepted your framing of fairness. Framing works through identity, not persuasion. People protect the story they have about who they are. In practice, this means you connect the desired behavior to the identity they want to maintain. You do not ask for action. You imply what someone like them does in this situation. This is done by placing the decision inside a trait, like decisive people handle this directly. If they resist, they risk looking like the opposite. It shows up when someone changes position but explains it as their own principle. They are not complying with you. They are complying with their self-image. Framing controls outcomes by changing the time horizon. Short time frames produce panic decisions. Long time frames produce compliance through inevitability. In practice, this means you choose whether you want urgency or surrender. If you want urgency, you frame the next hour as decisive. If you want surrender, you frame the next months as already moving in one direction. This is done by using timing to make resistance feel pointless or costly. It shows up when someone stops arguing the issue and starts negotiating deadlines. They did not change beliefs. They adapted to your time frame. Framing changes decisions by deciding what is being evaluated. If you let the other person choose the criteria, you lose control without noticing. In practice, this means you state the metric before the options are discussed. You decide what matters: safety, reputation, efficiency, loyalty, or control. This is done by saying the real question is not what feels good, it is what protects position. Once the metric is set, choices become obvious even if they are unfair. It shows up when someone dismisses your point as irrelevant to the main issue. They are not disagreeing. They are enforcing a metric that benefits them. Framing wins through repetition and calm delivery. A steady frame spoken repeatedly becomes the only frame people remember. In practice, this means you do not expand when challenged. You restate the same meaning until it feels like common sense. This is done by keeping your wording identical so the brain treats it as stable. The other person feels pressured to answer your frame, not your details. It shows up when they start using your exact phrasing while arguing against you. That is the handover. Once they repeat your frame, you own the lens. They are now debating inside your reality. Framing changes decisions by closing exits before conflict appears. The most powerful frame is the one that makes alternatives feel socially expensive. In practice, this means you describe the alternative as what weak people do, what careless people do, what outsiders do. You do it calmly so it sounds like observation, not attack. This is done by placing the unwanted choice into a category that threatens status or belonging. The person hesitates because the cost is identity damage, not logic. It shows up when someone stops exploring options and suddenly says, "Fine." They did not find a better answer. They felt the door closing and stepped through the one you left open.